Well, good morning. I'm going to wait for the attendees to spool in to this meeting, and then we'll get going. But we're just going to pause for about 30 seconds while everybody joins us. Okay. All right. Well, look. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I appreciate we have a global audience for this webinar. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by my panelists. My name's Tom Jenkins. I work at ETOA, and it's my responsibility to chair this meeting, but I'm delighted to have the panelists here, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So I'm going to turn around to Uma, and if you could just say hi and what you do. You're on mute, Uma.
Hi, my name is Uma, and I work with Europe Incoming. We're a DMC, and we deal with multiple markets that come from all over the world into Europe. That's it.
Okay, and Uma, you're kindly being joined by Dylan, who's your
Yes.
colleague. Dylan,
Yeah.
do you want to say hi?
Hi. Oh, yep. Hi, my name's Dylan. I'm the managing partner of Europe Incoming. Whatever Uma said, yes, we do exactly that.
Okay. Thank you. And Sharon.
Yes, I'm Sharon. I work at Vasayo Travel as a director of purchasing. We are a group specialist provider. We focus on group of 15 and more, coming mostly from Asia. We have offices all over Asia, and we sell Europe as a destination.
Okay, we're having a little bit of difficulty getting through to Jae-yoon. Jae-yoon, can you hear me? If you can, it'd be great if you could introduce yourself. If you can't, I think we will just wait for the connection to work. But I'll pause for a second. Jae-yoon, can you hear me? Right. Okay. Well, I think we'll take that as a no. I think we'll just go. Look, I think we're looking at the subject of this webinar is a vast subject. It's to do with Asia, which is obviously not only the largest continent, it's the most populous continent, and it has huge markets, all of which are very different. So it's a very sweeping topic, but allowing for the sweeping nature of that topic. I'm going to hand over to you. Let's just say, like, how have things really evolved over the last 2 years? Obviously, there was a complete catastrophe in terms of delivery, in terms of volume from 20 through to 22. But how's the markets that you've been handling re-emerge?
Sorry, is that me? Okay, so we primarily work with, in Asia, we generally work with India being the primary market for us. 29, we haven't quite recovered to 2019 levels. We're thinking we are about, say, 20% short of 2019 levels. What are the factors that possibly are contributing towards this? I mean, visa challenges are one. But the visa, the VFS is improving. This apparently this year they've improved more than last year, and next year they want to improve even more. But I think the roadblock really from India is the visa challenges. Price inflation hasn't really made such an impact. I don't think so. People are still spending. People are still traveling. So yeah, that's really from India.
Yeah.
That's the news I can
think
give you.
if I can just add along to that, it's also airline challenges, because there have been less airlines that have been traveling, less flights, and due to that, we've had a few challenges with date changes and different airlines. So that's also still because airlines are not to capacity as they were in 2019. So yeah.
Right. So what you're saying is that, I mean, mercifully, you're looking at one market, which is brilliant because it hones it down a bit. But from the Indian market, what you're looking at is the old stories of air capacity and visa issuance. But is that what you're seeing, Sharon?
Well, the first markets that resumed activity post-pandemic were, for us, Vietnam and Thailand, which are highly dependent on visa applications as well. So obviously, these had consequences in the destinations that we sold the most. Switzerland was the first country to facilitate the visa process. Hence, the destinations that we sold the most in 2022 and that remained stable for the following years were Italy and France, connected with multi-country tours via Switzerland. So that expanded in 2023 for other markets. Taiwan picked up very well. China also started resuming activities. So the destinations that we sold started changing as well, depending on how the visa process worked, flight availability, and we started selling more Germany, started to see an increase of demand for UK and Scandinavia, for example. And in 2024, we're seeing, again, a spike of demand for the UK, also as a result of increasing demand from China, for example, which is slowly picking up. Although the demand is a bit softer than our forecast for Q1 and Q2, we're seeing a very, very high demand for the second semester of 2024. So in terms of volume, we are back to pre-pandemic levels. Then the how we diversify the business, though, is a bit different and determine the destinations which were more in demand.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. I mean, I suppose you could almost divide the markets up in between those markets which require a visa to come to Europe and those markets that don't. And you almost have a different pattern of demand from them. So Japan, which I don't think is on the agenda today, maybe it ought to be on the agenda, or it ought to be a discussion point of its own, as does not have the same constraint on travel as for instance, India or China does. Now, do you think these... Excuse me, I've got hay fever. Do you think these markets have changed much? Are they evolving? I mean, is the post-pandemic visitor different from the pre-pandemic visitor? I think probably the question. Denny, can I start with you again?
So it really depends on what sector of the market we're talking about. If we're talking about Indian, sort of the generations that are starting to travel now, the younger generations, yes, they're what they want and their expectations has changed. But I think that's happened worldwide, really. I think for younger generations, what generation are Gen Zs? Their expectations are very, very different from the previous generations, like the millennials. So yes, that has definitely changed. But when we're talking about the mass leisure customer, their expectations haven't changed. I think coming out of the pandemic, the number of nights they would spend in Europe, that reduced, but that was due to a pandemic's aftershock. But now they're starting to travel the full itineraries, the 14-night itineraries, the 15-night itineraries across Europe. So really their preferences, one thing that we could possibly say that has changed slightly is that the Indian traveler, the leisure customer, is now open to more European local experiences.
Yeah.
And I think that's also another thing that we've seen coming out of the pandemic, and that's more of a worldwide thing for us as well, including Asia, is that people want to experience the local culture. They want to try local cuisine. They're more open to, they're just basically more open to local cultures. So that's the thing. That's a shift that we've seen. How long that is sustainable, we don't know. We have seen in the past, pre-pandemic, where the customers have been open to trying local cuisines or experiencing local cultures, and that's sort of backfired because of the taste didn't quite align with what the travelers' expectations were. But it seems like now our clients are our travel agents are pushing very, very hard on local experiences. So we have to see, and also out of the box ideas. This has all of a sudden come out now. DMCs having to suggest really new and unique ideas that customers may never have seen in the past. So there seems to be a little bit of a change. I wouldn't say such a drastic change, but yeah, there is one.
And Sharon, are you finding this as well? I mean, what Dylan's alluding to is almost a mild intensification of their interest in local cultures and local activities.
Yes, we have
Is this what you're seeing?
Yeah, we have seen an increase of interest in activities also for markets that would generally exclude additional services and would sell them as optional. So we have seen that indeed. Obviously, what we offer needs to be aligned with what the client expect. For example, although the demand for local meal has increased, I personally participated into a tour where we had 50% of Asian meal and 50% of local meal. And it was fascinating for me. It changed completely my perspective, because obviously when you have an Asian meal in Europe, you have a large variety of dishes everybody can share, while we don't have that in local meal. And we force our travelers to eat mostly chicken for all meals of the tour. So the ability to open the doors to selling more local meals, but however, keeping in mind that we are also offering a certain level of variety, as it would be if it was an Asian meal, would make a big difference in the way we can actually, let the customers appreciate the European experience.
I mean, Uma, is this your perception too?
Yes, it is. It is. I also think that post-pandemic, the Indian clients want to move away from the normal itinerary. So you have the mass traveler who wants to do Western Europe, but we're seeing lots of requests for other destinations like the Baltics, Croatia, Scandinavia as well is very popular. So it's like people want to travel the corners of Europe, which previously weren't very attractive. So I think we've seen that as well. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about the general behavior, but I suppose allied to that is the sort of consumers you're attracting. I mean, are they any younger? Are they different from pre-pandemic, or are they still very much the same demographic?
I think it's a mixture. I mean, we still have the same demographics for the mass travel, but we also have younger people traveling independently, doing individual destinations or exploring individual destinations on their own. So I'm not sure whether, plus with the access of other booking platforms and tools, they want to try things out themselves, like they're doing Airbnb, which was, I don't know, when I started in the Indian market, it was unheard of. They're exploring things on their own, very much the same way as, for example, European young people would do. So, yeah.
But we see.
Sorry, Dylan, please.
Sorry, Tom. Yeah, with European coming, the interesting thing about us is that our customer base ranges from student travel all the way up to seniors. So we've got a cross section of the entire sort of how students pursue travel, leisure, and corporates, MICE, and also above 55, 60 years old, the older travelers as well. But yeah, Uma's right. The younger one, the younger part, and I mentioned this before as well with Gen Zs, they are much more open to experiences, and they're much more sort of, let's say, fearless when it comes to traveling in comparison to the previous generations. Previous generations maybe needed to travel in groups. The newer generations are okay with solo travel or smaller group travel, right? So they're much more confident. Yeah.
And do you think they're better informed? I mean, this is,
Yes.
Of course, yeah. Of course, yeah.
Yes, they are.
They are. So you can't. There was never a bog standard optional. There were sort of bog standard optionals, but these guys can work out if they can do it themselves, whether it's worthwhile doing it themselves, whether it's worthwhile paying the money when they're there now. I mean, you're dealing with informed clientele.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think their tastes have also changed. I mean, there's a lot more interest for culinary tours, wine tasting tours, whiskey tours. I mean, in my time when I started in the Indian market, that was just unheard of. But really, there is a big, as Dylan said, and also Sharon said, there is a big interest in local culture, especially for the younger generation. Yeah.
But I guess
And
this is
also,
also the result of the fact that the source of information is social media for the
Yeah,
majority of the
exactly.
travelers. So what is popular on Instagram, like the knowledge of the restaurants and the main dish, would possibly come from Instagram or WeChat. So what's
Yeah.
popular on social media becomes what travelers want to do.
To
And
do.
sometimes it's not the right product for them. So the way we educate them makes a big difference.
it's quite interesting, Sharon. Actually, I was reading a report the other day how certain generations, what platforms they use to consume travel data. So Gen Zs use Snapchat, TikTok, and Insta, and millennials use newsletters, so email newsletters, Instagram, and I think Google search, and that's about it. But it's a big shift, as we can see. It's going more social media. It's going more people want to see actually the experience. So yeah.
The demand of influencers traveling with their own fan base is also increasing. So there are many agents who are not proper agents the way we intended, but they are selling their tours to their followers online, and they post everything about it. So obviously this creates a lot of noise in the community and publicity for those who can handle it properly.
This actually came out of COVID actually in 2020, where influencers did start influencing travel, which is very, very interesting actually. I know, Sharon, you've done some influencer travel. We've done a lot of influencer travel coming out of America, not from Asia, but from America. And it's huge. It's absolutely huge. We've actually broken into the celebrity market now. So there are celebs bringing over Eric Cantona, footballer. Everybody knows Eric Cantona, right? He's doing his own tours now. So we're organizing those. So very interesting stuff. That's how the world's developing. But Asia is more on social media than possibly in terms of influencers. It's huge market in Asia. So the travel landscape via online is only going to explode. It's only going to explode very, very soon. So we're starting to see that. There are new platforms that have started approaching us for business that do influencer travel. They've created like a marketplace for influencer travel. So there are platforms already from India that are approaching us to do this type of business. So it's very interesting how that landscape is shifting.
It's changing.
Because in India, if we look at the bulk of the business that comes out of India currently, is all travel agent, brochure product, go into store, sit down, and this is for European travel, right? So that's how that business is conducted. Then there's a shift in, there's the OTA, which is Make My Trip, and that's sort of like for domestic travel around India, but really international travel, it's a travel agent that sits there. Your big ones, your Thomas Cooks, your SOTCs, and those types. But now, obviously, now with the shift on social media and with the influencers, it'll be very, very interesting to see how the future generation consumes travel, and what the legacy players, the SOTC, Thomas Cooks, the travel agents, what are they going to do about this? Are they going to shift online as well and have their own influencers selling tours? But it'd be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, we're now dealing with futurology, which is wonderful because you can't go wrong.
Yes,
People will have forgotten it by then. But I think you're right. The intriguing thing is quite how long-lived old distribution networks are. I mean, I remember sitting there almost laughably as a young executive at American Express, being told as an article of faith that there would be no travel agents, there would be no tour operators by the year 2000. Yeah. It was simply, and it wasn't wrong of me. It was absurd of me to pretend that these guys would still be in existence. They were going to be absolutely wiped out by the internet, and everybody knew this. This was just what this was an article of faith. And what's intriguing is that what's amazing is not that they're still there, because they perform a function. Clearly, people want to use them, so and they want to use tour operators, guys. This is good news. What's intriguing is that the actual distribution schedule for what we do hasn't changed that much in about 40 or 50 years. I mean, if you're putting a program together for 2026, because we're already far too late for 2025. If you're putting the program together for 26, you'll be planning it at the end of this year. and you'll be purchasing it in the first 2 to 3 months of 25, and you'll be costing it and pricing it through the summer months. And you'll launch it around about September, and this has not changed in half a century. Weirdly, but that's strictly for the scheduled, as you would say, brochure product. I just find it amazing that we can't get, particularly given that a lot of our inventory is highly perishable, why we can't get products out to the market at much shorter speeds, a much shorter time frame.
Yeah, that's the ongoing problem with us. That's one of the things that we try to do is become faster. But we're attached to many suppliers, and it really depends on how those suppliers, how fast they are. But going back to one other thing that is going to change the landscape with the future generations, we were talking about this earlier, is the whole implementation of AI into travel. I think yesterday I was watching Apple's demo of their integration of OpenAI into the iPhones, and it is incredible what it's going to do for travel. And also with Google, they have a new travel platform with AI. So when you were asking the question about future generations and how they're changing, they will change in terms of having information already. Previously, people would go on Google and search and then have to go through multiple websites to get information. Now, it's a matter of asking the question and AI gives you the answer. So how informed customers are going to be is going to accelerate massively. It'll be huge in terms of the information the person has to hand within a split second. So I think as suppliers or tour operators or hoteliers or whatever it is, we have to assume our customers are going to become much more intelligent. And also we're going to have to become much faster to respond to them, because the world is going to become used to AI speed, which is click of a finger, you've got the answer. And tour operators, hotel, we all are going to have to join that speed rat race. Otherwise we're going to be too slow then to react to the consumer's needs. So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
So, does anybody want to say anything about that? Sharon, do you feel that it's going to be transformative?
Well, it is already. I think the future is now. I think AI is already highly involved, and we are already in the process of collecting the data that will serve our clients. The way we also support the travelers while they are on the road makes a big difference, because the reason why we as tour operators and travel agencies are still here is because we facilitate the communication between the suppliers and the clients. And this also means that if there is a problem, they come to us. They are still unable to fix it themselves. They need somebody to intermediate most of the times. So the way we jump in when there is a problem on the road, the speed of response, the type of support we can provide, and AI can facilitate that. Hence, absolutely, this is a direction we want to go. But if I may add to the conversation earlier, this is, if we look at the FIT market and wholesalers, those who are still there are the companies that invested massively in technology development, and that's the whole key in the distribution, right? The small companies that tend to sell static rates only and static contracts, those are the ones that are struggling the most, while the companies that are open to different levels of commissions and reductions and are supported by a strong focus on technology are those that are most successful. And that this will apply for groups as well at some point, because it's more and more hybrid now. Groups tend to be smaller, hence the consequence is there is no neat division between what is a group and what is FITs traveling together anymore.
Wow, this conversation's got wonderfully into sort of new areas, which is great. I just to steer it gently back towards the Asian market, if I may. I think famously these markets are price sensitive, and there are perhaps reasons for it. Are they becoming less price sensitive or more price sensitive? And are you finding, and Sharon's already alluded to it, are you finding that they're wanting to travel with smaller groups, or are they still content to be on a sort of a 52-seater scheduled tour? I think we'll say, Sharon, you're on the screen, so do you want to answer that question?
So yes, the tendency is to have smaller groups, and what we've seen is a fairly high cancellation ratio for series group, while the ad hoc demand is much more reliable. There is less cancellation rate indeed, and so this demands a higher level of customization to what we need to add on to our tours. So the low budget series are still there, of course, but there is more demand for more premium type of service, hence slightly higher budgets. So the type of products that we select has also shifted to a higher standard for the majority of our volume, I would say. There is increasing demand for incentive as well, which we didn't necessarily have before. The type of destinations have changed as well. There is more demand for south of Italy or for the Dolomites or for destinations that are generally not popular for the Asian market. So these also changed. And of course, they are price sensitive when it goes back to currency weakness. This has been a big issue, and it obviously affects the demand in the short and long term.
Emma, do you find do you agree with that?
Yes, I think, I mean, for the Indian market, it's definitely more price sensitive than it was prior to COVID. And that's due to more competition and more homegrown competition. So what we've understood now is, whereas prior to COVID, many of the traditional travel agents would go to a big tour operator and then they would come to DMCs in Europe. We're finding that they're doing their own sourcing. So there's small pockets of operators that, and we're really seeing this. And it's also affecting the big boys who we work with. So there are smaller people who work for big operators who've gone off, started their own companies, and are contracting Europe directly and selling Europe directly to the Indians. So for that, obviously, for people like us, that's I mean, that's making it very price sensitive because they have a certain margin structure and we have a certain margin structure. So every year it's a challenge. If it's not a visa, then it's airlines, and if it's not airlines, then it's these homegrown DMCs. I'm not sure whether that's happening in the rest of Asia, Sharon, but in India, it's very prevalent and it's making it tricky, but it's a big market. So yeah, and as far as group sizes are concerned, I mean, because we deal with the traditional mass market, our group sizes have remained the same for the itineraries for the clients that we work with, so for the group business, yeah. So yeah.
I think during COVID, due to the layoffs, there were a lot of people that left these organizations, then started their own smaller companies or smaller organizations, which then increases competition in the market. And so that will drive margins down, even though if you look at the statistics of India, there's about 1 billion people that are still coming up to the middle income level. So that's a lot of tourists. Those are people that have not traveled out of India and are still yet to travel out of India. So you could consider them as potential customers, but then by the time they get into middle income, and already with the way the market is very cutthroat, it'll be interesting to see at what price do those billion people get serviced at, or what margins, or how strong the tour operators are in the market to service 1 billion people. Because as Uma and I have seen, and I don't know about you, Sharon, for the rest of Asia, but margins every year, due to the level of competition that's coming in, they're going lower and lower and lower. And India is a big example of that. And they're very, very entrepreneurial, the Indians, right? So as soon as somebody leaves the company, they start their own company up. So it just becomes so many companies spawning in the industry. So I mean, that's right. Lots of people have started up. So yeah, and there's only an X amount of business, right? But there's a lot more people servicing it. So prices automatically come down. Yeah.
We have the same in terms of clients wanting to do their own things. However, the main challenge, I don't believe, is the hotels anymore. I believe it's the coaches. So for them to be able, especially in the current environment, to contract a coach company, find reliable drivers, and handle payment terms the same way we do it in Europe is a completely different challenge,
Yeah.
right? So I don't think that our strength is in providing the accommodation anymore, although we can sometimes have some advantage, but I don't think that's our strength. The strength is how we put things together and how we distribute it, targeting the right segment, because we also don't want to target only the low budget market or the extremely price sensitive market. We need to diversify and be able to offer something that for them makes sense to pay for and use our service for, in addition to the support on the road that I was mentioning earlier.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, hotels no more. We don't have that advantage with hotels anymore. I had a customer who was telling me that they will give me the rate of the hotel, and it's exactly the same as the DMC. So like, with the hotels? I think hotels have lost the DMC business as such, right? Before we would give certain hotels certain pieces of the business, but yeah, it's happened to us as well. There are certain hotels, though, however, that we have maintained relationships for decades, and they have honored our relationship. And they have also given us preferential prices in comparison to going direct to the end customer. But generally, the big chains have all gone into our customers' offices, giving direct prices and stuff. So it becomes very, very difficult for us. So Sharon, you're right. What is our value in this market? And it's really just putting a disorganized market together and organizing it and helping the customer really manage all the vendors. Yeah.
Do you find, by the way, audience, this is such a good conversation. I'm almost forgetting we've got an audience out there, but we have over 100 people tuned in. Please, if you want to ask any questions, use the question and answer facility that you've got on your screen there. Some people have already submitted some questions, which I'll get to in a minute. But if you're out there and you've got anything you wish to pose to our panel, please pose it, because it helps the conversation, which is already flowing very well, flow even better. I'm just fascinated. I mean, you've raised the point of price sensitivity. Am I right in thinking that for a lot of the markets that you're dealing with, luxury travel is not exactly a sensible buy, if I may put it in those words, insofar as the difference between a perfectly adequate 4-star hotel and a super luxury hotel in Europe is in the region of $400 or $500 a night. Whereas in India, you can get, for example, a super luxury accommodation for $150 a night. So the luxury doesn't seem to be a good buy in Europe as it is in India. I'm wondering, does this affect demand at all, or is this a misperception on my part?
I think things have changed, Tom. But prior to COVID, that was the case. But now, if you want to go and stay in a 5-star hotel in India, you're thinking of paying about £350 a night. So actually, no, the prices are very comparable. But I guess there's a very small segment of the market that goes into the luxury travel industry, a very, very small segment. We have some customers, and when they come, the billings are amazing, but it's like once in a blue moon. So having said that, I think, Dylan, you did some programs, so some HNIs, didn't you, recently for a company in India? So yeah.
There is
super luxury.
There is a luxury market in every country, and especially in Asia, there is definitely a luxury market. The question is that, and during COVID, it was the luxury customers that always kept traveling anyway, right? It was the people who've got the high disposable income are okay when markets are down, or if there is a problem in the world or whatever, they will still spend the money and travel. Luxury for now, one thing that we've noticed. And actually, we're launching it today officially on all social media channels. Through coming out of COVID, we had launched a product line for wellness travel, and it was a punt out there. It was just looking at some research. At that time, nobody was traveling, and we thought, you know what? Let's take a punt. Let's take a gamble, and we'll launch wellness travel. We did launch wellness travel then, and so far we've worked with around 250 customers. This is all from the US. Now, what happened is fast forward to sort of end of last year, the Indian market is now, they've discovered, oh, Europe Incoming's doing wellness travel now. And now the Indian luxury market is now asking us for wellness travel itineraries with 5-star accommodation with some hands-on experiences like cooking classes, wine tasting, and all that kind of stuff. And then also wellness activities. So it could be either like a physical fitness element, yoga, hiking, something of that nature. It could be really on a spa basis with massages, full-day spas, and treatments. So that's very, very interesting for us because that product doesn't exist in the world at the moment. And we've created so many itineraries around Europe, and we were doing it very quietly and slowly during COVID. And actually, we're doing the official launch today on social media. But that's the change that we've seen in the luxury market, is that they are veering more towards luxury and wellness and experiential activities. That's really how that market's changed for us. Yeah.
Sharon?
So there is some demand for luxury. There is more demand for incentive, I would say, for what is our experience, which means the type of services that are included are completely different. We have more requests for meeting rooms and gala dinners and 4-course dinner with etiquette course at the beginning of the dinner. So there is this demand. What is increasing is also the client's expectation, obviously, because even for the standard tours or slightly more upscale tours, paying such a high price compared to the pre-pandemic, the client's expectations become much higher. So even what was a standard tour brings with it, and the price that the client pays, the expectation that that is going to be a higher end type of travel experience. Hence, this has consequences in the number of complaints we received, because the wallpaper of the hotel is scratched, and or the carpet is dirty, and the receptionist wasn't smiling. So because the prices are fairly high that the clients pay compared to their previous experience, they do expect a better service that is not necessarily what is happening in the current environment.
It's extraordinary that your last comment, and I know you're illustrating the sort of complaint you might get, but David Michel's, the former head of Hilton, always pointed out that of all the things to supply, a smile costs nothing. It's one of the most basic things to do. Now, I'm absolutely thrilled that we're getting questions flooding in, so I'm going to start with some of the ones that people kindly sent in advance. And I've got someone which is very specific, and I'm going, what do you think we can do as a hotel chain in Iceland to better welcome Chinese guests? I appreciate it's a sector that you don't focus on, but do you think we should focus more on OTA platforms other than direct bookings in Chinese market? What is the best strategy, in your opinion, to get good sales in China? Sharon, do you want to try that, and I can give them a very quick answer?
Yes, I work with suppliers in Iceland, and the major challenge in Iceland is the cancellation deadline. We work with much longer cancellation deadline that we have in the other destinations in Europe, and this is not compatible with the requirements for the Asian market, especially if it's tied to visa deadline or last minute sale. Now, what happens is also that the rates are extremely high and the availability is limited. So the Asian market that we operate tends to be booked fairly last minute. So while I receive contracts from Iceland for 2026, I'm still booking 2024. And sometimes it's very difficult to guarantee availability later. So the distribution, the way it is now, is very split between FITs and OTAs versus groups. However, sometimes what we find is availability of 10 rooms or more on booking.com at high rates, while if we contact the hotels directly, they're tied to allocation with OTAs and they cannot sell us the same rooms that are available for the clients to buy directly. So sometimes it's more about the flexibility to give the space, have flexible conditions, which doesn't need to be 24 hours before as it would be on OTAs, but mostly like more flexible than the average Icelandic cancellation terms, and yeah, be ready for like a shorter booking window.
Okay, and I think if I may, because we've got lots of questions flooding in, which is great news. when it comes to selling Iceland to the Chinese. Unfortunately, 2 weeks ago, we had our own very own marketplace in China, which seemed to go very well. ETOA runs several workshops where you can talk to Chinese operators as a hotel. And I know as a hotel in Iceland, lots of people will want to talk to you. So I would commend the E2A workshops to you in order to make that contact. And this webinar itself is very much promoting the online Asian marketplace, which I'll cover at the end. We've got a Portuguese hotelier asking, what are the current prospects for 25 demand? What segments of travel are rising? Gosh, there are loads of questions here. What are the key factors you would highlight from a destination provider as core demand drivers for the Asian market? I'm going to hand that over to Dylan. There's 3 questions. What are the prospects for 25? Which
the hardest
segments
one.
are doing well? And what are the key factors you would highlight as a demand driver for an Asian market?
Okay. So, right. So what are the prospects for 25? I'll start with the first question. Sure. Currently, with the Asian market, and Sharon, correct me if I'm wrong here, but for the Asian market for us anyway, June is a little bit early for us to understand what's going to happen next year. Generally, it's around, I would say, from about September onwards that we generally understand what's really going to happen, because the traveling period for the Asians is it starts in March, sort of mid-March onwards, and then it starts picking up steam sort of mid-April, then May and June are like the craziest months. But the Asians travel in late, so yeah, we wouldn't know at the moment where it's going to be. However, judging by the news that's sort of going in the market in terms of how easy it's become for visa issuance now, how I think it's the UK have become easier with visas with the Indians and also with Schengen as well. Our estimation is that we should next year, we should be above 2019 levels, right? So that 20% gap that we've got currently, we should cover that up and we should slightly be above that, we would assume. And that's me being conservative. I wouldn't like to say we'd be 20% above 2019, but we might either be the same as 2019 or maybe 5% higher than 2019. Because the demand is definitely there in India. It's the challenges is that how do they come out of India to Europe, right? And Tom, sorry, what was the second question, Tom?
Which segments of travel are rising? And how would you highlight a destination to make someone want to go there, I suppose is the question. It's a good question for everybody, but
that is, that's a very interesting question.
Rising, you can give me a one-word answer. So youth segment, for example, would be a perfectly good reply.
Yes.
Okay,
exactly, a youth segment. Yeah, like what Gen Zs, right? Obviously, that's the new generation that's coming into travel. That's the new generation that's coming into the workforce. They're getting the disposable income. They are spending that money now, right? And they're younger as well, so they don't have the responsibilities of maybe large families where they have to, cut back or save or whatever. Now they're spending it for experiences. And what do destinations need to do to make themselves more attractive?
Well, what's the driver that makes someone, hey, I've got to go there?
Well, in India, if you can get your destination in a Bollywood movie, then you're going to be full.
It's true.
100%. Anything related to
It's the killer influence. So Sharon, would you agree with that remark? not a Bollywood film, Sharon, but can you think of another thing, an equivalent, a K-pop video or something?
Something that has been discouraging the demand in some countries in Europe is the number of events that have been affecting the prices and had a great impact on the possibility to organize series. For example, the Olympics in Paris have generated a decrease of demand for series business, which now results in loads of hotels send us open date for next month and August, right? So these obviously had a hit together with the UEFA 24 as well. So if hotels have the ability to guarantee some sort of stability with all the disclaimers that we understand, appreciate revenue management. But if we can guarantee some sort of stability in the pricing to facilitate serious business and continuity, that also pushes us to promote the destination. And something that hasn't come up yet, that I found fascinating when I talked to my sales manager in Asia, is that Europe is not considered a safe destination anymore. There are more and more situations with pickpockets, or passports have been stolen, money have been stolen. So compared to some countries in Asia, which are considered safe, we're not portrayed as a safe country anymore. So for Portugal, for example, I think the situation is much better than in other countries, for example. So that's something that as a destination, I would try to sell to the countries that are highly sensitive to this matter.
Wow. Well, you've covered almost what not to promote, but I know what you mean. The perception of security really is a sine qua non. If people think they're going to get harm going somewhere, they tend not to go there. It's a very straightforward position.
The one thing, Tom, we realized.
sorry.
The one thing we realized about that's, again, just adding on to Sharon's thing about what makes destinations attractive, and the one thing we've seen all over worldwide is food. If food and drink, that seems to be everyone enjoys food and drink, and generally people would go to destination. I mean, Italy, we sell a lot of Italy, and really, when I ask the customers, why are you going to Italy? Okay, fine, the culture and whatever, but the food, the pasta, the wine, I mean, everybody wants to go to Italy for that, right? So, and the gelato. So food and drink generally comes up the top spot, and using social media to show customers this would be very, very interesting, and that's what would make customers want to come over to the destinations.
Food. Excellent. We've also got the next question. I'm actually going to park because I think it's almost worthy of a series of webinars. There's saying interested in client behaviors and how we can adapt to their demands. This is from a very large hotel in London, and I'm intrigued that it's so different from different markets, because the demands from an Indian market will be very different from those from a Chinese, which will differ from those of a Japanese. I mean, this is not a straightforward answer. I think I'm almost going to park that unless anybody's got an instant reply to it. And we've got a request from Best Western Hotels, is how's the recovery rate of flight connections? That's the crucial question. Do we see this increasing? China claims to be boosting their flights to Europe dramatically, but is this happening in India?
Yes, it is. It is. Their flights are increasing. I believe Air India, no, Dylan, are increasing
Starting more flights,
yeah. So it is increasing, and new airlines are coming up. So from India, the flight capacity is increasing for sure.
And Sharon,
I think they've increased it.
Sorry,
I had numbers on this, Tom. I had some actual figures, and I think I think they've more than doubled the capacity per week going out of India, more than doubled it. So I think it's 2/3 more than what it was prior. Okay. I had the figures, but I don't want to say the wrong number. But yeah, it has increased drastically.
I mean, having shrunk back, the air capacity is coming back, and this is good news. How can we encourage further onward trips from Asian visitors? This is a dispersal question. Asian visitors landing in London to destinations in the Northwest. It has to be said, this is from an interested railway company, I think I might say. So if you've got Asian visitors, what do you do to encourage them to go up to Liverpool, Manchester, Wales, and the Lake District? It's quite a big area, but I mean, do you do anything to sort of say to people who are taking a trip to London, hey, you know, if you considered Manchester or Liverpool or Windermere or Llandudno or whatever it is that you might be saying. Uma, have you got an angle on this? Dispersal? All you ever do is sell London?
No, I mean, actually, what we've noticed from India is that a lot of the carriers, especially Emirates, they actually land in Manchester or they land in Scotland. And so when they want to come to London, they actually do the reverse itinerary. And that's because I think the airfares are cheaper and I think the taxes are cheaper. So it's actually the operators that are doing this for us, funnily enough, to be able to attract that crowd. I mean, we try to sell the whole of UK and we've seen that also. One of the things that that we didn't mention is that people actually do want to travel by rail as well, except not just coach. So we do have, before it was always itineraries with coaches, now it's can you please include rail travel into it. So obviously that's when we try to promote other parts of the UK. So scenic journeys, Lake District. I mean, they all love Lake District. And going back to Dylan, a couple of Bollywood movies have been shot in Lake District, so people do want to go there. So
Got to get them to Llandudno though. I
yeah.
think I think the only issue there is that if they're wanting to attract the luxury end of the market onto the trains, they've got to concentrate on how the baggage is handled on these things. And it's very difficult to get porterage now, particularly in UK in UK stations. All right, I've got a string of questions here, and we've got 10 minutes to get through them. How is demand for FIT travel into the UK and Scandinavia? It's a double question. So, what's everything looking like for the UK and Scandinavia from your point of view, Sharon? For
So
FIT.
we only do groups, so I can answer in regards to the increasing demand for small groups, which for us means from 10 to 15 people. So there is definitely an increase in that versus the larger groups that we had before. Demand for Scandinavia is growing. I think they were great at promoting the destination post-pandemic, as you know, great lands, amazing nature, and the quality is much higher. Clients are very quality focused right now, as I was mentioning. So Scandinavia is fairly well known for the high quality service that they deliver, and rates go together with the quality that they provide. But there is increasing demand for sure, and the demand for UK is booming, especially for the second part of the year, which means also coach shortages, which is something we need to handle. I don't think promoting other destination than London is a problem, because we also try to bring the business away when we find more availability and more competitive rates to put the packages together. So the demand is definitely there. It's mostly about everything that comes with it. Is the supply ready to handle it?
Yeah, I agree.
From an FIT perspective, Tom, we can tell you, because we actually do have an entire FIT team that deals with all of Europe. And yes, definitely demand has definitely shot up. Our FIT team is, in comparison to groups, is growing at a much faster pace, because FIT is generally, it's a much more faster growth market in comparison to groups, right? So yes, FITs is definitely increased for us, for sure.
We're going to have almost one-word answers to the rest of these.
Okay, no problem.
I'm going to be flying through. Are you seeing any ESG sustainable requirements demanded from the consumers? So are people going, oh, I want, to be responsible, I want to be sustainable. Are you seeing this at all, Uma?
Yes, but not from the Asian market. Well, not from the Indian market. So
okay,
yeah,
that's fine.
Correct.
Sharon, are you seeing? My impression is it's occurring, but it's not overwhelming. Is the point?
Exactly. So it's more important, I think, the way we perceive it and how sensitive we are to the topic to make the right choice with the suppliers we use, rather than this being a request from the client themselves.
Right. Are you seeing do you feel that perceived overcrowding in some key cities, and they mentioned Rome and Barcelona, but there are other overcrowded cities available if you wish to choose them, and constraint on tickets to key attraction is having an influence on the choice of destination? So, I mean, are you finding people going, oh, we know that Rome's crowded, so we don't want to go there? Are people saying this? Sharon, you're nodding.
Yes. we are already seeing this for the Jubileum next year, right? Because we believe that that is obviously the same way the Olympics affected Paris and France for this year. The situation in Rome is already complicated, not because the availability is not there, but because the suppliers don't know what rate to give us and what conditions to apply. And the clients are scared that the rates are going to be so high, availability is not going to be there. So it's obviously driving potentially away demand from the segments which are not going specifically for that event. And in regards to overcrowding, of course, it makes a difference. Maybe they spend less days in Amsterdam and they include a night somewhere else in the Netherlands rather than staying longer in Amsterdam. The city tax, the way the city tax is increased also affected the choice of the destination for the main cities that are mentioned here.
I'm sorry, Thea, I don't know if you've got a comment on that, Uma.
No, I agree. I agree with exactly what Sharon has said. It's correct. People are shying away from destinations when it's tricky to go and see the main monuments. So, yeah.
All right, we've got a blizzard of questions coming in. Some of them just saying it would be great to speak about rental car services, but I think which maybe we should do on another occasion. I think car rental is not something which the group's market is particularly strong on. But which Asian markets is Central European selling best? That's interesting. Is Central Europe selling well in India? Is the first question. Dylan?
Central Europe, yes, Central Europe has always been sold to the Indian market. Generally, the perception of the Central European market is that they'll get better deals there in comparison to Western Europe. And Central Europe generally tends to be second on the list. First, generally, is Western Europe. Then once they've done Western Europe, they go into Central Europe. You'll see a lot of incentive movements coming into Central Europe, by the way.
That would work. And your incentive movements, out of interest, are they all quoted on a net rate basis for the Indian market? I imagine they would be.
Yeah.
They're not structured as commissionable.
No, they're net.
No.
Yeah, they're net rate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. That's a nice little bomb under the mice market, which they'll have to get their heads around in some shape or form. Sharon, just I may say, because you've got a wider reach of markets there. Is there a top market for Central Europe? And could you tell me which market is good for Croatia?
So we have increasing demand for the Balkans region, for example, which doesn't mean only the Balkans. It means flights going into Vienna or Prague or Hungary, for example. There is, I think, Thai Airways opening new routes for Budapest, for example. And this also opens it in addition to new lines from China as well. So this also opens the possibilities to sell tours departing from Central and Eastern Europe, and hence extending the itineraries that we have now to countries that are generally not the top request from the agents. I hope we don't have more demand for Croatia because that's already fairly overcrowded. I rather sell secondary destinations in the region.
Okay, I've got, I suppose the one question we've got is very specific. We're a pancake restaurant based in Amsterdam. We're an ETOA member. How can we promote through you for the FIT market? And that's a question for Uma very quickly. If you're a pancake restaurant in Amsterdam, what can you do for her for Indian FITs?
Gosh, I think I'll let Dylan answer that one.
All right, okay.
I actually just connected with Martin about that. Yeah, who's from that pancake restaurant. Yes, once upon a time we did for the Indian market in every country that the FITs or even groups stop. We used to do some sort of a local experience, food experience, but a very quick one. And so if you're talking about pancakes, we think the way we would introduce that is just offering customers local experiences as they get into destination. So we would just need some sort of options of some packages, again, experiential, where possibly they could be involved in creating the pancake. That would be very, very interesting for them. And then obviously eating it afterwards. So any sort of workshop style thing that can be created, by all means, yes. They are, again, price sensitive, so it can't be a very, very long workshop with lots of people. It's best to sort of do something quick and dirty. But yeah, we can definitely introduce them to that experience because, again, the new travelers do want to try local cuisine and definitely could put it into some sort of a trial thing, then they will definitely go for it. Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry,
look, we're running close to time here. Really, it's just to thank my panelists. There is no green room that we retire to for a drink afterwards on this thing. So I have to say thank you and goodbye to you here. So thank you very much, Uma, Sharon, and Dylan, for sharing your expertise, being quite so chatty. It's made my job very, very easy to keep the conversation flowing. So thank you so much. I'm very sorry the other panelists were not able to join us, but they were unavoidably detained. It's really my job to thank the audience for being here and just to draw attention to draw attention to the fact that in November this year we've got a specific marketplace which is called the European Travel Marketplace on the 26th of November. It's online and everybody interested in this market is I'm drawing your attention to this very, very especially, is I suppose the right way of phrasing it. Other than that, it's goodbye from me, goodbye from everyone else. Thank you, audience. Thank you, panel. Look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.